Hi, I'm Amanda Morrall with interest.co.nz, and I'm here today with Gary Young. Gary is the Chief Executive Officer of the Insurance Brokers Association of New Zealand. He's here for a double shot interview with us. Hi, Gary.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Listen, we've got lots of changes going on in the industry these days, but particularly with the new Financial Markets Authority having taken over. That's going to have some impact on your industry. What do the changes mean for insurance brokers? How is it going to shift your roles or your designations?
Well, the important thing is that all insurance brokers are now financial advisors, and they need to be registered with the registry, and they also need to belong to a dispute resolution scheme. So that's the two key things that they have to do. Plus, they have to have a disclosure statement as well to give out to clients.
Right now, there's certain classifications of products under the new Markets Authority. There's the Class 1 and Class 2. What sort of products are insurance brokers legally allowed to sell you?
They are in the Category 2 products, which are all general insurance products, as opposed to life or investments or any other.
Okay, so can you give me some examples how they're...
House and contents on the domestic side, business interruption, material damage, liability, motor fleets and so on the commercial side. Yeah,
but about 90% of the work that you do is in the commercial sector, is that correct?
Vast majority is, yes.
Okay. One of the issues of controversy that's come up is, I understand that the Insurance Council of New Zealand has gone to government asking that insurance brokers actually be obliged to declare how they're paid, their commissions. I'd be interested in hearing your response, whether that would be a good idea or a bad idea for the industry.
I think transparency is important, and so we don't have an objection to disclosing that insurance brokers are paid by commission, which they are, and they may also charge a fee if the commission is insufficient, which it often is in the more complex areas. IBANZ actually has a rule for our members that if the fee that you charge is over 5% of the premium, then you must declare it to your clients.
So do you think there'd be any value in having to declare commissions then officially, as AFAs are required to do?
Well, it may work for some people, but I think you'll find that the commissions are relatively low in our sector, and all companies pay pretty much the same commission, so there's no incentive to go one way or the other.
You mentioned before that one of the hazards of maybe introducing that system would be that there'd be this tendency to DIY, and potentially people would be insuring themselves and creating some added risks for themselves or their businesses. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. If they think that they're paying extra to get advice, they may choose not to get advice, which I think for the average consumer would be a bad call, because insurance is complex, and whenever you have a claim you quickly find that out. So I think not to get advice is not a good call.
Right, okay. Well, that raises an interesting question, because how well qualified are insurance brokers to give you that level of advice? Why couldn't I just go do it for myself after having read up on the internet?
Probably because the internet doesn't actually give you enough information to understand the contract, and an insurance contract is a legal contract. So if you've had any experience of legal contracts, you know that there are complexities within them, and you need to understand what they are. The important thing is that you understand what you are and aren't covered for, because when you have a claim, that's the important thing, that you've got it right. That's the time when you find out, and it's a bit late to get another contract then.
But unlike authorised financial advisors who are being required to sit exams, etc., and go over these plans, insurance brokers are immune from that. So what qualifications do insurance brokers have?
An insurance broker is not required to have any particular qualification, other than under the legislation they must have the skill to do the job that they're doing. So they are required to be able to prove that they have the skill level to do whatever they are doing. We as an organisation, IBANZ that is, we encourage our members to sit qualifications, and the Level 5 Certificate in Financial Services that the government is required for AFAs, authorised people, is one that we think should be a good starting point for most of our members, and we are certainly working on getting them to sign up to that.
Yeah, you mentioned before that there was something called a qualified insurance broker rating or program.
Yeah,
can you explain that?
We have a status, I guess you'd call it, within our membership, which is a QIB, qualified insurance broker, and that means that that person has a certain level of qualification and does 25 hours of continuous professional development a year, which is 5 hours a year more than the government requires of authorised advisors. So we put a lot of emphasis on that continuing professional development so that people stay current, up with the play on what's going on in the industry.
Yeah, and as it stands, how many of your members would you say meet that qualification?
I think currently there's about 30% have that, and we would like to think that they all will in the future. Yeah.
Is that a priority for the Insurance Association?
It is. In fact, IBANZ has actually formed a college which is registered with NZQA and is delivering both Level 4 and Level 5 certificates in financial services. So it's been a major initiative by us, and I think probably the only association that's got its own college.
You mentioned also before there's something called a code of practice, and you've adopted something that the AFA has as well. Can you explain how that might work?
Yes, the government brought out a code of practice for all authorised advisors. IBANZ has adopted that code as its own code, and all members who sign up to join IBANZ sign up to that code as well. It is the same code as the government, except for a couple of clauses which weren't relevant to our sector, and we've amended those to make them more relevant. But essentially we are insisting that our people follow the same code as the authorised advisors.
Okay. We've had a few cases recently, of some insurance brokers going under and later discovering they got through into business in the first place on a really flimsy credit rating and maybe a $500,000 deposit. So there's some changes in the works that are going to affect a broker's or an insurer's ability to go into business. Can you elaborate on this new rating system?
That's the Prudential Supervision Act. It doesn't apply to insurance brokers, it applies to insurance companies. Okay. And it replaces the requirement that previously that was you had $500,000 deposit with the public trust and you had a claims paying rating. In the future you don't need either of those. Instead you'll go through a solvency test amongst other things to ensure that your organisation is up to taking on the risk that you are. So I think that will greatly improve the security of insurance companies.
Yeah. As a member of the public, there's going to be a lot of competition heating up in the insurance industry. Premiums are going up. Ostensibly, that would create a value add for an insurance broker who knows what they're doing. How can you be sure that your insurance broker is going to provide the best bang for their commission buck?
I think firstly you should check to see if they're a member of IBANZ, obviously, because they have a code of practice to which they have to adhere. So I think that's quite important. And you should be looking at what insurance companies they are suggesting your risk is placed with to make sure that they are giving you good advice. And
the credit rating, is that not something we should be putting so much weight on anymore?
No, because the credit rating is really now being replaced by the solvency tests and so on.
And so how will that solvency test work? What are they going to be looking for exactly? What's the threshold?
Well, the Reserve Bank is running it, and they proposed certain levels prior to the Christchurch earthquakes. But what they found is with issues around a couple of insurance companies that have run into trouble, that they've had to review those solvency tests, and they're now come out with some revised levels that they are checking with the industry to see if they are suitable. So they have actually raised the standard even before it's come into place.
Okay. You've been in the business for 35 years now, and you've been Chief Executive with IBANZ for 6 years. Are you confident the changes that are coming through under the Financial Markets Authority are actually going to sort of raise the standards overall in the industry or tighten things up?
Absolutely.
In what respect?
Well, I think they just reinforce the professionalism of our industry. So I think that it sets some standards which we didn't have in the past, either on the insurer side or the insurance broking side. So it really sets some standards for professionals to meet.
Will there be greater impetus, so because you have a different standard from authorized financial advisors, for the industry to self-regulate as well, like through your association, to encourage more members to kind of get their credentials up in that kind of business?
Yeah, and we've taken up that challenge of having less regulation imposed by imposing our own, such as taking on the government's code. So we've said we don't want to be at the minimum level. We actually want to be higher than that. And it's the same with our professional development program. It's more hours than the government requires. So yeah, we are picking up that challenge.
Okay. All right, Gary Young, with Chief Executive of the Insurance Brokers Association of New Zealand. Thanks for joining us. I'm Amanda Morrall with interest.co.nz.
Thank you.